Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. A guilty verdict after weeks of testimony and hours of deliberation in the federal fraud trial of Elizabeth Holmes. Plus,
a lot of cases end with the murder. This one, it's just a small piece of the puzzle. Chandler Halderson killed his parents on July 1st, 2021.
Prosecutors and defense argue their case in opening statements for the Wisconsin murder trial of Chandler Halderson. And a Brittish Royal's lawyers argue a 12-year-old settlement bars a woman from suing him. We'll discuss the latest in the civil sex case against Prince Andrew. Then later, jury selection is delayed again in the retrial for accused murderer Dayonte Resiles. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. After weeks of testimony and over 50 hours of jury deliberations, we finally have a verdict out of a California courtroom. Former CEO Elizabeth Holmes is found guilty on some of the fraud charges she faced. After days of deliberations, the jury returned a verdict on 8 of the 11 charges. On Monday, jurors indicated they couldn't come to a unanimous decision on 3 counts. The judge issued an Allen charge and instructed them to return to deliberations. The federal jury convicted the founder of the failed blood testing company Theranos of 4 counts of defrauding investors and found her not guilty of charges relating to patients. It was previously believed that Theranos would revolutionize blood testing, but there were issues with the company's technology. Prosecutors argued Holmes lied to investors to gain clout for Theranos and raise hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. Her defense team blamed other leaders within the company, including COO and former boyfriend of Holmes, Ramesh Sunny Balwani. He is charged with similar crimes and is set to go to trial next month. Holmes now faces up to 20 years behind bars, a fine of $250,000 and restitution for each count. Let's bring in LA County Deputy Public Defender Philip Dubé and Terry Austin. Philip, were you surprised by this mixed bag of guilty, not guilty, and hung charges, especially not guilty for defrauding patients?
Not at all. In fact, I was actually quite heartened by it. Keep in mind, this jury was out for several weeks, and it sounds like they gave their undivided attention to each and every count, and they evaluated all the evidence and her testimony to see if each element of each charge was proved beyond a reasonable doubt. And for those counts that they felt that the people or the prosecution did not prove up, they found her not guilty. And where you had a split in that poll, they deadlocked. And the ones where there was reasonable doubt, they found her not guilty. Let's just wait and see if they decide to retry her on the hung counts.
Yeah, and I bet you that her ex-boyfriend, Sonny, is also looking at these charges as well, trying to anticipate what he's going to do. Now, Terry, with a verdict like this, what's next for Holmes?
Well, she's out on bail. She walked out of that court, and the next thing we're going to see is a pre-sentencing report. And soon, obviously, we'll get that sentencing date. So she's facing 20 years in prison for each account. And so basically, I think they're going to be served concurrently. There's no minimum sentence here. And then, of course, the judge is going to look at the federal sentencing guidelines, and she has no prior record. So I think she's going to probably just get a sufficient amount of time, but something that's necessary to show restitution here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Concurrent is definitely the more likely, but consec is something that her defense team is definitely going to be worried about to see if these charges will stack on top of each other or served at the same time. As Terry said, we'll find out as the days continue. New developments as Andrew Cuomo dodges not 1, but 2 legal battles. This comes just days before his next court date. The former governor will not face criminal charges on allegations that he sexually assaulted an aide. The complaint filed in October came 2 months after he resigned amid his sexual harassment scandal. It alleged Cuomo had put his hands under a woman's shirt in 2020, around the same time he was publicly accused of groping an assistant, Brittany Camiso, at the executive mansion. Albany County's district attorney said in a statement Tuesday morning that a thorough and independent review of the investigation was over and the allegations couldn't be proven in court. Unrelated to the sexual misconduct allegations, Cuomo also won't be charged in connection to his former office's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Cuomo allegedly undercounted nursing home deaths from COVID-19 by as much as 50%. But after an investigation, there was no evidence that any laws were actually broken. Last month, Cuomo was also formally ordered to relinquish earnings from his book about the COVID pandemic after it was determined he used state resources while writing it. Now to Missouri, where a man convicted of murder will spend the rest of his life in prison. In October, a jury found Michael Humphrey guilty of first-degree murder and armed criminal action for his part in the shooting death of famed snake breeder Benjamin Rennick. Prosecutors say Humphrey drove his ex-girlfriend, the victim's wife, Lindley Rennick, to kill her husband at the couple's farm in June of 2017. After his conviction, Humphrey made a deal in exchange for his testimony against Rennick in her trial last month and also led police to the murder weapon. Rennick was convicted of second-degree murder in early December in her husband's death. Both trials told the story of Rennick conspiring with Humphrey and an employee of the spa she owned, Ashley Shaw, to kill her husband. Prosecutors say Humphrey also gave Rennick the gun used in the shooting. It took Lee nearly 2.5 years and a tip from another boyfriend of Rennick for the police to target her as the prime suspect. Humphrey is sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole with a reduced charge of second-degree murder, and his armed criminal action charge was dismissed. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, Prince Andrew's lawyers want a sexual assault lawsuit against him tossed, what the judge said about one of the Duke of York's arguments coming up. But first, opening statements and the first witnesses take the stand as the Chandler Halderson's murder and dismemberment trial gets underway in Wisconsin.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. We head to Wisconsin now, where opening statements are presented in the trial of Chandler Halderson. The 23-year-old is accused of killing and dismembering his parents, Bart and Krista Halderson, and lying to police about them going missing. This all happened around the 4th of July holiday last year. Halderson's father's remains were found days after he reported him missing. His mother's remains were found a few weeks later. Police say Halderson made Google searches like body found and Wisconsin dismembered body found before his arrest. Halderson faces multiple charges, including first-degree intentional homicide, false information on a kidnapped or missing person, mutilating a corpse, and hiding a corpse. On Tuesday, the prosecution presented its opening statements detailing the gruesome way Bart Halderson's body was discovered.
Someone had crudely chopped off the head, the arms, and sawed off the legs in the middle of the thigh, leaving the underwear on and the beginnings of the pants. They removed the sticks and brush over a course of a few hours. They brought out doctors from the medical examiner's office to make sure everything was done appropriately. They rolled the torso over. There were gunshots in the back. This man had been shot in the back and chopped up.
The defense followed with its brief opening statement, urging jurors not to convict Halderson.
I'm going to ask you to resist some things in this case as jurors. We already talked a little bit about proof beyond a reasonable doubt. What that means is you must resist guessing. You must resist speculation. You must resist storytelling. And only convict when it's proven, or if it's proven, which it won't be, beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm going to ask you to resist losing your objectivity. Objectivity may be hard for people in this case because of the graphic nature of what you've just been told or what you're going to see. But you need to resist losing that objectivity. Commit to being jurors, dispassionate, logical. Don't be swayed by fear. And I ask you to resist any pressure you might feel to convict Mr. Halderson of murder in this case.
Law and Crime Sierra Gillespie is in Madison for the start of Halderson's trial. We caught up with her as opening arguments began.
Brian, day 2 of Wisconsin versus Chandler Halderson began in Madison, Wisconsin, in the shadow of the Capitol here at the Dane County Courthouse. It kicked off with prosecution opening statements delivered by Dane County Assistant District Attorney William Brown. Now, he detailed for more than an hour to jurors what led up to and what followed the deaths of Bart and Krista Halderson. He detailed to jurors what he said defendant Chandler Halderson made in discrepancies when he was interviewing with police. He also showed jurors where Bart and Krista Halderson's remains were later found, even saying that Halderson chopped up their bodies with knives and with a saw before burning their bodies in the family fireplace. Now, on the opposite end of things, we also heard from defense attorney Catherine Dorrell. She delivered a comparably shorter opening statement, only lasting about 10 minutes, in which she reminded jurors that they need to presume Chandler Halderson innocent and reminded them to keep in mind reasonable doubt. Now, she ended that opening statement basically by saying Chandler Halderson did not kill his parents. Now, the rest of the morning and into the afternoon on Tuesday included several state witnesses who were involved in the Chandler Halderson investigation. Now, Law and Crime will continue to follow this case from gavel to gavel, so stay with us for the latest developments. For Law and Crime Daily, I'm Sierra Gillespie.
Thank you, Sierra. Let's jump into this new trial with LA County Deputy Public Defender Philip Dubé and Terry Austin. Philip, what were the strongest parts of the defense's opening, and did it raise any reasonable doubt?
Well, the strong part was that she is a strong advocate for her client, obviously, right? She didn't just phone it in. Now, on the other hand, it really was sort of that Tony Robbins slow walk, if you will, to a pep talk. And typically, whenever you really don't have an affirmative defense or exculpatory facts, you basically argue Lady Liberty, the Constitution, and reasonable doubt. And it seems like that's what she's hanging her hat on here.
All right. I would agree, but don't give away all of our tricks out of the bag as public defenders, Philip. Terry, what's the goal of the prosecution's opening, and did they achieve it?
Well, the goal, Brian, is to make sure that they lay out what the story is. And you have to be clear, you have to be concise, and you also have to be passionate. You have to describe the events in detail without giving too much minutia, because you don't want to lose that jury. And here the prosecution, William Brown, did an excellent job. He accomplished all of that. He told the jury what led up to that murder. He told the jury exactly what that murder was, how it happened after the murder, that he dismembered those bodies, and he made it clear what the motive was, that the son wanted to basically cover up how his life was failing.
Right, interesting how that plays out. It almost seems like two different types of personalities, at least in the opening statements thus far. If you want to watch more of Wisconsin versus Chandler Halderson, make sure to watch Law and Crime Network for gavel to gavel coverage. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, Prince Andrew's case goes to court, asking that a sexual abuse lawsuit be thrown out. What his lawyers had to say, and why he believes his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein could help him in the case. Plus, a Florida court case is delayed once more, why Dayonte Resiles has to wait 2 more weeks to be retried for a 2014 murder. Welcome back. Lawyers for Prince Andrew argue in federal court that he can't be sued by a woman accusing him of sexual abuse because of a 12-year-old agreement she made with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Law and Crime's Angela Levy is here with what happened in court.
Brian, Virginia Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew, saying she was forced to have sex with him when she was younger than 18. But the Duke of York is pointing to a 2009 agreement, a settlement that Giuffre agreed to with Epstein. And he says that that bars her from suing him. Now, Giuffre accepted a $500,000 payout from Epstein and agreed the settlement would remain confidential. The settlement, though, also protects, quote, other potential defendants. Prince Andrew's lawyers say that would include Prince Andrew. But Giuffre's lawyers say this applied to people involved in trafficking Giuffre, and she was trafficked to Prince Andrew, which he denies. Giuffre's attorney David Boies says the settlement does not shield Prince Andrew from litigation because it applies to things that happened within the jurisdiction in Florida, and the agreement was with Epstein, so only he or Giuffre could enforce it. Now, Judge Lewis Kaplan said he will issue a decision on Prince Andrew's motion to dismiss soon, but he said the scheduling order for the case will remain in place. It will not be stayed, meaning that both sides will continue to exchange evidence with one another in discovery. Brian.
Thanks, Anjanette. Back to break down the latest in the Prince Andrew hearing is LA County Deputy Public Defender Philip Dubé and co-host Terry Austin. Terry, what were your thoughts on the argument that a third party like Prince Andrew can't use this agreement as a defense?
I thought the argument was unique. You know, agreements like this are not uncommon. Third parties can benefit from a settlement agreement. The judge seemed to think that only the parties in the agreement can enforce it, but I think that argument surprised both counsel. Counsel for Andrew was trying to say that he was in the category of protected people, and of course, David Boies, Giuffre's lawyer, was arguing that it couldn't be held as far as Prince Andrew was concerned because he did not fall into the category of people doing the trafficking, as Anjanette said. So we'll just have to wait and see. He said he'll make his decision soon, and I think Prince Andrew will be sweating over that decision.
Well, I'm not sure. According to him, he can't sweat. We'll wait for that discovery, though. Philip, as I listened to it, it was interesting. The judge seemed to guide Giuffre's lawyers to arguments he agreed with and really push back on Prince Andrew's lawyers. How should we read into that?
Well, it sounds like the judge had reached a tentative ruling and was relying on the arguments of counsel to be goaded into a position either way. But it sounds like he was tending to rule in favor of the woman who entered into the agreement with Epstein. Now, to be fair, I think that Prince Andrew does have a claim as a third-party beneficiary to that settlement agreement between Epstein and Giuffre, or however you pronounce her name. I apologize. The state of Florida recognizes third-party beneficiaries that are not named in contracts if the parties actually intended such unknown, unnamed third parties to benefit. And in paragraph 2 of the agreement, they actually mention that the class of people to benefit from the contract include those who could have been named as defendants. And clearly, Prince Andrew belongs to that class. And even though he may not have known anything about this agreement, he has the right to benefit from it under Florida law.
Yeah, Philip, I'll even add one more point to that as well. It also lists a category of people, that being royals. Anjanette, the judge took issue with one of Prince Andrew's arguments in the court. What was it?
Yeah, Brian, Prince Andrew's attorney, Andrew Brettler, he said that Virginia Giuffre, in her complaint, in her lawsuit, really didn't lock in a story. She didn't give, a date where she says Prince Andrew assaulted her. She only made general allegations that she was abused in Ghislaine Maxwell's home in London. But Judge Kaplan told Brettler, quote, "That dog is not going to hunt here." He said that that will not be a basis for dismissing the lawsuit, dismissing the complaint, and he said that that argument was not going to hold any water with him.
Well, we'll check on the hunting dogs as that judge gives us a decision soon, as they said, and we'll continue with that case. Thank you all for your updates. When we come back, more delays in the trial of an accused killer, why the judge has pushed back jury selection as Dayonte Resiles is retried for a 2014 murder. Welcome back. In Florida on Tuesday, jury selection was delayed again in the murder trial and the retrial for Dayonte Resiles over problems with evidence. Part of the issue is the state's hair sample lab report is not ready yet. The defense wants to have their own specialists take a look at the evidence themselves. The judge felt the case is not ready for trial, so he continued it until January 18th. Rosales is charged in the 2014 murder of Jill Halliburton Sue. Sue was found tied up and stabbed to death in her bathtub. Prosecutors say Rosales burglarized Sue's home and killed her when he discovered that she was there. Rosales' case went to trial in November, but after 5 days of deliberation, it resulted in a mistrial when one juror disagreed with a guilty manslaughter verdict. Rosales also made headlines in 2016 when he escaped the courthouse during a hearing. He was on the run for 6 days before authorities caught up with him. If convicted, Rosales faces the death penalty. Philip, why do you think there are so many evidence delays in a retrial? Shouldn't all the evidence be out there already?
Well, the short answer is it depends. Sometimes when the original trial deadlocks, counsel has an opportunity maybe out in the halls to debrief the jury as to what they felt was missing or what they could have done differently. Who knows? Maybe a couple of the jurors voiced some concerns about the forensics and the biological evidence, and it kind of tipped off defense counsel to do more work and investigation in the lab. Additionally, it could be about funding. Maybe the money wasn't there at the time that they needed the expert, and now they were able to convince a judge to give them the funding. Plus, it takes time. You know, it could be that at the time they really needed this information, the labs were backlogged and they couldn't get a technician in place to actually test the specimen. So it could be a host of factors. But the bottom line is Dayonte is entitled to due process, and that means he has the right to the help, if you will, of all the ancillary services of experts, private labs, and government labs to find the truth.
All right, I agree, and we'll see how that pans out from in the coming weeks. Terry, when the trial does start, what themes or questions do you think the prosecution will ask in selecting jurors?
Well, one of the things I think the prosecution is going to ask is about the death penalty, because this is a potential death penalty case, to make sure that the views of the jurors are such that they could impose, or rather vote guilty as far as the defense is concerned. So I think they're going to make sure that they get a jury who can listen to all the evidence.
All right, we'll see how it plays out. Thank you both, and thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.